Amitakiapi, Leampetuashte. Welcome to the ICT Newscast. I'm Shirley Snavy. We start in Canada, where there's been progress in finding the remains of missing and murdered Indigenous women. Our partners at APTN have this report.
It's damaged us internally.
In 4 words, Melissa Robinson sums up the past 26 months since her cousin was killed. In December 2022, the families of Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myran were told their loved ones were brutally murdered and their remains ended up in the Prairie Green Landfill. To add to their pain, the Winnipeg Police Service told them there would not be a search.
We were constantly told no because it couldn't be done, or, it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. But here we are, less than 3 months of the search commencing, and already, remains have been found.
A physical search of the landfill began on December 2nd, 2024, almost 2 years to the day the families heard the 2 women were victims of a self-confessed serial killer. This past August, Jeremy Skibitsky was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years for killing 4 women. Rebecca Contois, Harris, Myran, and the yet-to-be-identified person given the name Buffalo Woman. The same summer, after fighting a year-long political fight with the city, its police, along with the former Manitoba government and multiple feasible studies later, the families were told the feds and province would commit $20 million each to the search. A search that has close to 40 people doing shift work. Many of them are family members of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in this province. Earlier this week, the Harris and Myran families were called to the search site with news of potential remains being found. Jordan Myran is Mercedes' sister.
We knew those women were in there, and this is the day that we've been waiting for. Although it's a good thing that we found the remains, it's also very, very hard.
Morgan's youngest daughter, Elle Harris, shares how she felt leaving the search site.
Yesterday, when I left the landfill, I felt like I was abandoning her again. I felt like I was leaving her.
This isn't the first time Winnipeg experienced a serial killer preying on Indigenous women. In 2012, Sean Lamb pleaded guilty to killing 2 women, and charges were stayed on a third, Tanya Nipinak, because her body was never recovered. At the time, her family was told that she was likely in the Brady landfill, a city-owned one on the south perimeter of Winnipeg. They were told she would not be searched for. Something that's lingered in the air for over a decade and on the minds of the families today.
We need to go back to Brady, where we know Tanya Nipinak is at. Again, I don't know how anyone sleeps at nighttime knowing that she still lays there, and we know she's there. So why hasn't the work begun over there as well?
Kyra Wilson is the Grand Chief for the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs and was the Chief of Long Plain at the time the women were murdered. For her, if a search happened back then, there could have been prevention policies in place.
Right now is a prime example. If you listen to us, how many years ago, this could have been prevented.
She says with the alarming rates of violence on Indigenous women and girls, action needs to start now.
A major reason why we need to look at systemic change, and it needs to happen immediately. And we can't ignore this crisis anymore.
Meanwhile, the RCMP and the province's chief medical examiner are now investigating what was found this week. The province says the identification process could take up to 2 weeks. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
We previously took you to the Turtle Mountain Nation in North Dakota, where American Indian Movement activist Leonard Peltier has returned home after decades in prison. Now we take you back for Peltier's first interview, granted to Indigenous reporter Graham Lee Brewer. He's of the Associated Press. Let's take a listen.
I'm here in Belcourt, North Dakota at the Turtle Mountain Reservation to speak with Leonard Peltier, who did an exclusive interview with the Associated Press after being released from prison after 49 years. Peltier was an active member of the American Indian Movement in the early 1970s and was on the Pine Ridge Reservation to provide protection to Native people there. He became involved in a firefight with FBI agents where 2 lost their lives. After fleeing to Canada, he was extradited to the United States, where he was tried and given 2 consecutive life sentences.
I didn't kill nobody. I didn't shoot nobody. And there's no evidence that I did. Because they wanted revenge, and they didn't know who was responsible. and they said, put the full weight of the American government on Leonard Peltier. We need a conviction. And when they say that, you don't have no rights.
Leonard Peltier was in his early 30s when he first entered federal prison, and now at 80, he's experiencing a number of health conditions and, of course, trying to adjust to a world on the outside after nearly half a century behind bars.
I only been out, a week? And I'm having a hard time believing this has actually really happened for me. It's all been a shock to me. And I don't know, I feel so honored that, it's hard. Just not cry.
For many Native Americans across the country, Leonard Peltier represents broader injustices visited on Indigenous people by the American government. But to law enforcement, he's seen as a remorseless killer who's never taken accountability for the deaths of 2 agents on the Pine Ridge Reservation in 1975. Although back in his homelands, Peltier remains on home confinement. Although he says that doesn't deter his activism. He plans to keep fighting for Indigenous rights and tribal self-determination.
I didn't really know if we were successful or not when I was sitting in prison, in a prison cell. And to know that our young people are standing up and saying, no more, no more. We're not going to let you do this. We're gonna resist. And it makes me feel so good, man. And I'm thinking, well, I didn't give my life for nothing.
Thanks, Graham. What an amazing story. ICT's Kevin Abras spoke with Brewer about what it was like to sit down with Leonard Peltier for this rare interview.
Thank you for joining us today, Graham. We appreciate your time. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, OCO, my name is Graham Lee Brewer, and I'm a national writer for the Associated Press, and I focus on Indian country. And I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation.
First, talk about how EP was able to arrange this interview.
He was insistent that his first interview on the outside be done by a Native journalist. And so really, I think that's the reason why I was able to. I'm sure it doesn't hurt that I work for, the Associated Press, one of the largest news organizations in the world. But yeah, he really wanted to speak to a Native journalist first.
What was it like to be able to meet and interview Leonard Peltier? Where did the interview take place? And, what was your mood and his like?
He was in good spirits. We met at his home on the Turtle Mountain Reservation in Belcourt, North Dakota. He even was wearing a replica sweater of the one that is from that famous photo of him being led in his extradition in handcuffs. And so I spoke to him on Tuesday, so it was a week since his release, and he was still kind of waking up in the middle of the night, fully expecting to be back in his cell. And he is an avid consumer of the news, even when he was still incarcerated. He is very up to date on world events. He even mentioned the rise of the far right in places like Germany. And the concerns that he have are the same ones that he had in the 70s, which is that he feels the federal government has energy interests on tribal lands, and that he doesn't see the Trump administration as any different in that regard, that he thinks that they're going to want the oil and minerals that exist in tribal lands. And so, his advice, his message, I think, to specifically young Native activists is that you have to show up. You have to be there. And, he emphasized that he doesn't think that should mean that you need to be violent, but he does think that just by being there, showing up in the thousands and resisting, saying that we're not going to stand for this is really, really important. And I think he also believes wholeheartedly that the coalition of people, even outside of Indian country, who now recognize that the issues that affect Native communities also affect them, is much broader than when he first entered prison in the 1970s. And so that gave him a lot of hope too. And he really spoke to how seeing young activists in particular fighting for the same things that him and other AIM members fought for in the 70s was really one of the things that helped carry him through prison, gave him the strength to think that, he didn't do all of those things for nothing, and that his incarceration had meaning and purpose.
Well, clearly accusations that Peltier was involved in the murder of Anime Pictou-Aquash have become central to the discourse regarding his release. I would be remiss in not asking whether Peltier said anything else about this, and what kind of emotional reaction he had upon you questioning him about these accusations.
Well, like you mentioned, Kevin, that that has become kind of a central part of the discussion when it comes to Leonard Peltier. And so I felt it was really important to ask that question, and also just to give him a chance to say in his own words, how he wanted to respond to that. He said that, he had no knowledge of her death, and he spoke, fondly about anime, and that, that they were colleagues and friends, and that he feels that what happened to her was terrible, and that, he is glad that the two men, who were responsible for were prosecuted and incarcerated for it. But yeah, I mean, like I said, he reiterates that he had no knowledge of her death.
Did Peltier talk any more about the, emotional and psychological impact of having been incarcerated for 49 years?
He still maintains his innocence, that he didn't deserve to be in prison and he deserves a full pardon. And that he does experience some anger when he thinks about what he's missed out on over these 49 years. He talked a lot about his grandkids in our interview too. But when he sees the support he got when he came home, it really gave him in his incarceration what he did miss out on. It gave it some meaning, and that was one of the parts of the interview where he started to get emotional, and was really, I could tell he was really trying hard to fight back his tears, because that meant a lot to him to come out and to hear people tell him, thank you for what you did. Thank you for standing up for Indigenous rights. And that, like I said, it gave his life purpose, because, the majority of his life was spent in a federal prison. And so I think, for him, he's still in a way kind of searching for what that all meant. He's still on a mission that doesn't feel that he's fully fulfilled yet. And so he mentions in his book, Aboriginal sin, this idea that, being born Indian, you are inherently political. And so his entire life has been shaped by politics, and I don't think that he thinks that that's over by any means.
Well, I appreciate your time, Graham. And, thank you for your work, sharing Leonard's story, and sharing his story in his own words with the rest of the world. So I appreciate that. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I really appreciate the opportunity to come talk about it.
Nitsika tai gitsi. Nitsika tai gitsi means I feel the good in what you've done. Nitsika tai gitsi. Nitsika tai gitsi. I feel the good in what you've done.
Mystery lovers are gearing up for the next installment of Dark Winds. ICT's Sandra Schulman has this interview with Jessica Matten about her role and new projects.
Okay. Hi, Jessica. How are you doing?
Good. How are you, Sandra?
Great. Thank you for joining us.
Well, it's good to see you again.
From your new home in New York, right?
I know, yeah.
Exciting. Big move. So I watched several episodes of Dark Winds, and obviously I can't give too much away about season 3, but you have a really strong role and storyline in this season. And I know you can't tell us much about it, but how did you feel about deepening this character, both in the professional roles on the show and in a personal life?
I mean, it's been just an honor to be a part of this show, and true to the journey of the Hillerman books. After Tony Hillerman passed and his daughter Anne Hillerman started writing and continuing on the books, she also started to extend Bernadette's character. And so it's been a joy of just, getting to play Bernadette and seeing that play out on screen. So Bernadette's character this season, it's all about her taking the border patrol position. And so she's completely in a separate world from Jolie Porn and his world in a lot of ways, even though there's a lot of parallels of internally what they're going through, interestingly enough.
And I liked that they, again, they take a use of a lot of tradition and, the language, and use a lot of those storylines. It's really deep into the culture and 70s, which is even more interesting. And what do you hope viewers take from season 3, though?
I'm grateful to the fan base that has, followed us on the journey of season 1 and 2. And I really just hope that they like season 3 as much as they've enjoyed the last 2 seasons, and that they continue on this journey with us, and that I hope it becomes, something later on in life that they remember as being a part of that time period of their own lives. Just like the other project I'm working on, how, it really resonates with them, and they can reflect back in that moment in time and they're like, oh yeah, that's when that show was on. And yeah, it was like my comfort show to watch or something.
So what other things are you working on beyond Dark Winds?
So right now I'm still in the midst of shooting a feature film for Paramount Studios called Avatar: The Last Airbender. That's also starring Dave Bautista, Eric Nam, and Romain. I can't pronounce his last name for dear life, but I've heard only amazing things about him, as I have with the rest of the crew. And it's a female producer and director team, so it's so awesome to like be in the studio with them and just do it for the last, I would say, a year and a half we're getting to. Yeah, but I'm really, really excited to be a part of that project. And I know how much that means to a lot of people in the world, and people who've grown up watching that show. So as I said before, I really just, I hope that the fans like what I do with the character, and that I'm able to serve justice, and yeah, that they just enjoy the art we help to put out in the world. And outside of that, I'm still producing and running my Indigenous Film Academy, and we're producing short films for them right now on the res. And AMC has generously helped to partner up with us on that, and help us with some of the financing. And AMC is just like this entire network full of like really down to earth, hardworking, amazing people. And I just feel really, really fortunate that this is the studio that we're working with, and that we get to, yeah, collaborate with.
What kind of stories interest you that you would want to be involved in telling, you said, with short films?
Well, short films right now, we're talking about the trials and triumphs actually that happen on the res, but with humor. I produced a documentary 2 years ago that premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival called Boil Alert. And that was spotlighting and highlighting all the Indigenous reservations across Canada and the States that are on boil alert for the lack of clean drinking water, and really getting insight and delving into what those communities are dealing with on a regular basis. It's third world conditions in our own backyard. So, all due respect to people that feel the need to go overseas to, aid there, but we have our own backyard to fix, as I've been saying for decades. And so being able to produce content that sheds more of a spotlight on that, I hope increases more awareness and compassion and support for the communities. But also what it does is it acts as, a sense of purpose, an employment opportunity for people coming off the reserve who may not in fact have those opportunities elsewhere. So my biggest joy in life is to be able to help push them forward in that regard.
So you've also become quite a bit of a fashion icon. You're on the cover of Cowboys and Indians magazines, the new issue, and I know you were in a bunch of the big shows at the SWAIA Fashion Week last year. So is that fun for you? Just something else to, I don't know, and explore a lot of Native designs, right? These up and coming Native designers.
Sandra, this is our secret. I actually would rather not. Definitely more. I like the acting and the producing, and but what I do love is the people behind the fashion. I love the creators, the designers, and for that alone, it's been a complete honor to be a part of it. I still to this day get really nervous walking the catwalk, and so I would rather not for that reason alone. Like I don't know what it is. It's that and the what is it called? I see, I don't remember the names. When we even have to do press for our shows or projects, I get really, really nervous just before I go up. In my head though, I'm like, I'm gonna nail this out of the park like Zendaya. I'm gonna pose just like she does. I'm gonna, and then as soon as I get up, something happens, and like mentally, I just kind of shut down, and then I get that twitchy, nervous laugh, and then it's all downhill from there. But no, but I appreciate you saying, with the fashion statements. Hey, I'm 5'10". I get it. They're like, hey, tall girl, come here, put on the clothes, walk down that runway. And if it gives me the opportunity to continue to, collaborate with the Indigenous community at large, hey, at the end of the day, I'm all down for it. And for the Dark Winds cover shoot for Cowboys and Indians that was just released today, I actually helped to produce and style that entire shoot. So I'm the one that brought all the designers in to make sure that they got features as well. And Kate Nelson, the editor for it, she's just one of our greatest supporters in the Indigenous community of always highlighting the work that we're doing. So yeah, like I said, just grateful to be a part of the fashion world in that respect.
Well, the clothing tells stories. I mean, you're a storyteller, right? With your acting, with your producing. I really see it as another story because all the fashion incorporates, Indigenous designs and modernizing them, but it always has such a special, strong story, I feel like, to tell. It's not just random clothing at all. It's really powerful designs that people are doing, and it's a whole industry.
Yeah. Oh, I would never think it's random. My science degree is actually in clothing textile science. And before my acting days, I actually worked at LUK magazine, and my dream was to work in high fashion. So I have deep gratitude and deep respect. And having studied a lot of art history courses in architecture, even sound theory and everything, I completely understand how a lot of designers draw inspiration and do a lot of incredible research of, certain time periods and eras and how they mesh and amalgamate that and blend that into the fabrics alone. So it's like, even the material that they choose can also reflect something that they're paying, respect to.
Terrific. All right. Well, that's all we have. Well, we look forward to Dark Winds and seeing what else you're doing this year.
Cool. Thank you so much, Sandra. Thank you for your time. And thank you, Carrie, as well.
The season 3 premiere of Dark Winds is Sunday, March 9th on AMC and AMC Plus. A premier Indigenous nonprofit is shutting down. After 7 years of influencing policy, media, and public perception, Illuminative is closing its doors. Founder Crystal Echohawk, a citizen of the Pawnee Nation, cites a changing political climate as a key factor, but says the work is far from over. She tells ICT's Mark Trahant that while Illuminative's framework may no longer be the best path forward, the fight for Native representation continues. Read the complete story about the organization's impact and what comes next at ictnews.org. Film festivals worldwide are creating opportunities for Indigenous storytellers. Last month's Big Sky Film Festival is one of them. The Missoula, Montana Documentary Film Festival offers free submissions in its Native Voices category. Program Director Ray Wybush says the festival's focus on Native filmmakers honors tribal homelands.
I think we saw it as a responsibility in a place that exists on Indigenous land and also in the Mountain West when there are lots of filmmakers who are underrepresented in film festivals, and we saw it as an important part of our mission to help raise those voices and shine a spotlight on them.
The Big Sky Documentary Film Institute also offers fellowships for Indigenous filmmakers and a teen documentary challenge raising the voices of young filmmakers on rural and Indigenous lands. Learn more about it at bigskyfilmfest.org. Substance abuse continues to impact Indian country, but with the right training, you could help prevent an overdose. In Lincoln, Nebraska, the Indian Center hosted a workshop aimed at saving lives. In 2022 and 23, drug overdose deaths was the highest for American Indian and Alaska Native people. This according to the Centers for Disease Control. Education and the availability of Narcan are factors. The community at the Lincoln Indian Center learned about this life-saving drug.
We have a grant-funded program at the NPAs that allow people to get Narcan for no cost throughout the state. And then we also have a grant through the Region 5 on grant funding from opioid settlement funds that allows us to also have some vending machines and some grab-and-go sites, including the Indian Center here in Aiken, that we're excited about. So yeah, I go and do presentations to educate people on opioid overdose, opioid use disorder, how to use Narcan, and then talk a little bit about the stigma behind it as well.
The good news is that rates are going down, the first time prior to the pandemic.
Yes, they have seen a reduction in opioid overdose. Yeah. So that doesn't mean necessarily that we've solved the problem, but we have less people who are dying from it, which is really what our goal is. We want to make sure people have access to it so that people aren't dying from it. So
Naloxone, or Narcan, is sold over the counter in most pharmacies across the country. However, it's available for free in the mail and at many distribution centers. Check out harmreduction.org for national resources. StopODNE.com has instruction videos. For ICT in Lincoln, Nebraska, I'm Shirley Snavy. And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ICTnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.